Well, hello everybody. Welcome back to another eSchoolDocs training video. My name is Cody. I'm the lead developer here on the eSchoolDocs team. In this video, we're going to demonstrate some of the new features surrounding supervision that we've released here recently. In particular, we're going to demonstrate how to record supervision logs and some updates around direct observances that I think supervisors are going to be very happy about. Let me start off by saying that supervision sort of breaks the mold of a lot of the other functionality in eSchoolDocs, and let me explain that by going here to my calendar. So I am logged in as a supervisor, and my name is Supervisor, and we can see all my calendar events here. Let's go ahead and look at my assistant's calendar. And then we'll look at this log here for Owen Clay, and we'll say that we directly observed this log. Now I want to point out something that gets a bit weird here. Assistant test, meaning my assistant, is the author of this log. Me as the supervisor did not author this log. I just directly observed the log. But I am still associated with this log because I directly observed it. And I say that supervision breaks the mold of a lot of other bits of functionality within eSchoolDocs because even though I as the supervisor am not the author of this log, I would like to see this log on my calendar because I directly observed it. And now as of this version of eSchoolDocs, that is what happens. And now as of this version of eDocs, if I do go ahead and close that window and then go to my calendar, I do see that log now on my calendar. Before this release, logs that I directly observed were only visible if I was looking at my assistant's calendar, but now looking at my calendar, you can see that. You see my assistant's log that my assistant authored, and that's kind of made clear by this little disclaimer here where it says provided by assistant test. This is making it clear that I, the supervisor, meaning the calendar that I'm looking at is supervisor's calendar, I am not the author of this log. Assistant test is, but it is showing up on my calendar because I did some work associated with this log. I am associated with this log through a direct observance. And as we can see that through the little eyeball right there, I can hover over it, see this log was directly observed by supervisor. And if I click on it, I can't edit this log other than my direct observation details, but it still shows up on my calendar. So someone who's reviewing my calendar for the week will still see this log on my calendar, even though I am not the author or owner of it. They will still see that on my calendar. Logs that I directly observed will also show up on the daily agenda in a similar way. So right here we can see these two logs. I, the supervisor, am not the author, the owner of these two logs. My assistant was the provider, so we can see these look a little bit different. You see this little user icon here, and it says provided by assistant test. This is just an indication to me as someone from the outside looking in that even though it's showing up on supervisor's calendar, that supervisor in these two cases was not the owner of these two logs. And again, if I click on those here, I can't edit them. I can edit my direct observation details because I was the one who observed it. But again, I am not the owner of these two logs in this context. And if I now go and look at my assistant's daily agenda, notice there's no other indication that assistant test was the provider for these logs because I'm looking at assistant test's daily agenda. It'd be redundant to then tell me again that test assistant was the provider for those logs. And then finally, if I go to the logs list page, we can see, again, I'm looking at assistant test's logs list page. So we can see in these cases that these three guys right here in the middle look a little bit different because these logs, assistant test was the author of them, but they were directly observed by supervisor. So the way we chose to display that at a glance is we kind of break into the next line, and then we do the little supervision eyeball icon, and then we say directly observed by supervisor. But then if I go to my logs list page as supervisor, we can see that now it looks a little bit even more different. It's saying written by assistant test, directly observed by supervisor. So it's still giving me the direct observation details about this log, but it's also giving me an indication that I, supervisor, was not the author of these three logs, that in fact assistant test was the author. So now I'm back in my calendar. Let's go ahead and talk about supervision logs. If you're familiar with older versions of eSchoolDocs, you know that we had a notion of a direct supervision log that was distinct from an indirect supervision log. And previously, direct supervision logs could only be recorded in the context of a treatment session, and direct supervision logs always had a student, at least one student associated with it, because it would be any student that was within that treatment session would then be associated with that direct supervision log. It works a bit differently now in this release of eSchoolDocs. If you want to record a direct observance, meaning a direct supervision log that includes a student, then you have to do it through a treatment log, whether it be an IEP, STEPS, 504, or evaluation log. And that's what we've demonstrated already through going to my assistant, finding the logs that I directly observed, clicking on them, and clicking record direct observance. But because direct supervision was only allowable through a treatment session in the previous versions of eSchoolDocs, there was no way to record direct supervision in any other context. So let's say that my assistant was providing some screenings at a school and I directly observed all those screenings. I provided direct supervision for that whole set of screenings. There was no way to record that in the older versions of eSchoolDocs. But as of this release, you can now do that through what we're just calling supervision logs. So we've simplified things a bit more, where it used to be a direct supervision log and indirect supervision logs. Now we just have supervision logs that are either of the type direct or indirect. And I'll go ahead and demonstrate that now. So let's say that I provided an hour and a half of direct supervision right here in this time period. And let's say that my assistant was performing some screenings at a elementary school. So I'll go ahead and click into this time slot, and we'll click this new supervision log option, and we can see this little eyeball. The eyeball is going to be the universal sort of indicator of supervision activities, let's say. So I'll go ahead and click on that. It automatically populates me as the supervisor. We'll say that assistant test was the assistant. And this is where you choose whether it was direct or indirect. So in this context, it was screenings. There were students involved, even though the students that were involved were not in my assistant's caseload necessarily. I don't need to track that those students were directly observed from any given time period. So we'll say direct, and then we'll go down here and we'll just provide a narrative. We'll say directly supervised some screenings. And we said it was about an hour and a half, so we'll change that stop time to 9 o'clock. We go ahead and submit that. Now we're going to see this pinkish, purplish, I don't know, I'm kind of colorblind, event here on my calendar. Supervision, again, it breaks the mold from a lot of the other logs in eSchoolDocs. The subject of the log is my assistant. There's no student involved in this direct supervision log or indirect supervision logs for that matter. So the subject is the assistant. So that's the big name that you see here, as opposed to in all the other event types, the student name is the big name that you see. Now that this is on my calendar, I can go ahead and click on it to edit it however I need to. Also, from the logs list page, I can see supervision logs are now added to this list of log types that are available to see here. If I want to edit it, I can click on the date and time information to edit that log however I need to. Again, the subject of a supervision log is the assistant, so that's the name that we see here in this column as opposed to a student's name. This column here is showing me whether it was direct or indirect, and this last column is telling me who the supervisor was for that log. Also, on the daily agenda page here, we can see 2 direct supervision logs, actually 1 direct and 1 indirect, and that's really all there is to it. Now if I want to record an indirect supervision log that took place here from 8 to 8:30, I can click in that time slot, select supervision log, and then just change this to indirect. I'll go ahead and select test assistant, and I'll say demoing some stuff, submit that, and now we've got our new indirect supervision log right here on the calendar. So again, just to reiterate, if I am directly supervising my assistant with a student involved and I want to be able to track that I directly observed that student later on through some kind of reporting, then I want to do that through a direct observance that took place on an actual treatment log. So that would be an IEP log, steps, 504, or evaluation log. In any other context, if I want to record direct supervision, then I must use the new right supervision log option and select direct. We are going to be providing the reporting that's required for SLPs and SLPAs for like your percentage direct service hours, your percentage work hours. We will be providing all of that in a future release, so stay tuned for that. All right, so that's all that we wanted to share in this video. Let us know if you have any questions or concerns. And with that said, hope you guys have a blessed rest of your day. God bless you, and we will see you next time.